Thanks so much for joining us today, everybody. My name is Danny. We're here to talk about hyper adaptive insurance process management. Brought some of my very good friends and better looking people than me. I need a new headshot. You guys look like movie stars in these. Kevin is an account executive with Decisions. He's been with us for a while. Vade is one of our crack sales engineers. And I'm so pleased to introduce Jess from Rethink, one of our customers in the UK. Jess, can you tell us a little bit about what Rethink does?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Rethink, we are a digital underwriting platform in the London market dealing with specialty insurance. So that is London market does with all kinds of complex business. It's typically your kind of large, I suppose, corporate placements. So things like property portfolios or cargo or business interruption for various kind of industries. We deal with 27 classes of business, which gives you an idea of the kind of breadth and complexity there is to it.
It sounds like super complex, and you have a really interesting use case to share with us today, and interesting differences in the UK and North American markets.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, oh my God, I see Wilson joined from Kenya. Wilson wins. Wilson, make sure that we get your email address. You win today, my friend. Nairobi, Kenya. That's amazing. So before we get into the good stuff, let me tell you a little bit about Submerse. Next week, we are in Singapore. Believe it or not, we are actually in Singapore next week. Submerse are our deep dive training events. It's a 3-day session where you get to spend time with our developers and architects and engineers and our founders and all sorts of different customers and prospects and partners of ours to take training in the platform. We have a foundations track for people that are just getting started in decisions, as well as a master class for those that have been working for a year or more. So that's next week, the 8th through the 10th. And then the 14th through the 16th will be our first virtual Submerse. Fingers crossed it goes well. It's kind of hard to translate live events, but we're hoping that some of our customers and prospects that haven't been able to join us live will get some value from that. And then November the 12th through the 14th will be at World HQ in Virginia Beach. November is an awesome time to come to the beach. It's cool, but not cold, and most of the tourists have gone home. So be sure to check us out at decisions.com/events. Next week, same time, same bat channel, advanced automation for streamlining the student enrollment lifecycle. We have a lot of higher education customers, and they are coming out of the woodwork with so many different use cases to automate manual processes. And then the 15th through the 17th, Kev, we're going on the road. Are you ready for Vegas?
Vegas is going to be great. Also looking forward to Austin.
Yeah. We're going to Insure Tech Connect at Mandalay. It's a huge event. So I hope maybe even some of the people that are on this webinar might be attending. Be sure to check us out there. We are at booth 2938. Never seen me work a show. You definitely want to check that out. And what's the other event that's coming up? Claims Connect?
Yeah, Connected Claims. It's going to be a great show in Austin. Definitely more focused on claims management instead of ITC. ITC, it's everything.
I know. I know. I'm like looking in the app. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Well, great stuff. Check us out at decisions.com and we'll get to some more particulars. A little plug for what I do. I'm the analyst relations manager at Decisions. I'm the guy that talks to Gartner and Forrester and Everest. And we were recently recognized by the Everest Group in their peak matrix for process mining. Yeah, and that's really exciting. And speaking of process mining, for those of you who don't know, process mining gives you the ability to look at a digital process end to end by analyzing log data, highlights the bottlenecks in those processes and the inefficiencies, and then it kind of gives you some predictive analytics to be able to figure out how to streamline those processes. Also, to be able to analyze like what the inefficiency cost you, what the return on investment for the streamline would be. So really, really important part of our platform. But speaking of that, at the show next week, we are giving away a free claims process analysis to anyone that wants one. And I think Kevin, we right before this. We're going to extend it to anyone that's on this webinar as well. So if you're
Yeah.
interested in seeing the benefits of process mining and getting a visualization of your particular claims process, please let us know. Drop an email to Kevin at kevinlindquist@decisions.com or pop it in the chat right now. We will follow up with you.
Well, Danny, I want to make that offer really clear if we can just spend one more minute on that.
Yeah.
If you meet at the show, we can talk a lot more about it. But we're not just giving away one. We
No.
do this for as many people as are interested. And what this engagement will entail after we just sign an NDA is gathering event log data. You know, a lot of people expect that when you build a process and decisions, because it's business process management, that you'll be able to identify bottlenecks in the process inside decisions. And while that is true, a lot of people don't expect that we can show you the bottlenecks and generate a visual map of a process outside of decisions, even if you're not using decisions at all in that process today. So that's where we'll bring our crack team of Six Sigma black belt folks and throw your data into our process mining tool and start to go deep. But thanks, Danny, for letting me touch on that a little bit more.
No, 100%. Yeah, let us tell you about your claims process right now. What's going on in your business right now? And it's not a raffle, right? Anyone that wants one gets one. We want you to take a look at our process mining solution. So, Q&A, you can wait till the end if you want to, but you don't have to. We love a spicy chat here at Decisions. Got a bunch of folks on from Decisions right now. So if you have questions, just ask them right in the chat. We'll save some time at the end, of course. But quick overview of today's agenda. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Decisions platform. I promise it'll be quick and painless because we've got this really interesting guest today. We're going to talk about Jess and Rethink and the interesting underwriting use case in the UK lead follow market. We'll take a look at those places where we touch the insurance business and that we think are screaming for automation. And we'll take a look. Veda will actually show us a claims process in the Decisions platform. We'll take a look under the covers as well, so show you how that was built. So let's talk about Decisions. Decisions is a no-code automation platform, and it comes with these 5 tools. We call them the 5 pillars of automation. The first one is a rules engine, and that's a system that allows users to define, manage, and execute business rules. It enables businesses to keep logic consistent and centralized. Integrations. Weave a connection between all of your apps and systems, breaking down silos and ensuring that data flows smoothly, accurately, and in real time. It comes with a workflow manager to facilitate the creation, management, and execution of business workflows, allowing tasks to move from one step to another based on your predefined criteria. Process mining, as I mentioned, examines business processes based on event logs and helps in discovering process patterns, identifying bottlenecks, and suggesting improvements. And then finally, an interface designer that gives you an intuitive and efficient experience to your customers and users without having to write any code. In fact, none of these tools require any code, 0 lines of code. They are all completely visual. Why is that good? Because that allows the people inside of your business with the domain expertise of your business to be involved in the development of applications to automate and streamline and wring efficiency out of your business. There's 3 areas of automation where the Decisions platform really shines. The first one is that pure business rules or decisioning application. The rules engine gives you a place to centralize business logic and expose that logic to business users, not software developers, to edit and maintain using graphical design tools. It gets the logic out of stored procedures, web pages, or custom code, or your team's heads, and puts it in a place where you can easily change it and maintain it without writing a single line of code. It's enterprise class. It's capable of millions of transactions a day across thousands of rules and things like medical claims processing, insurance underwriting, mortgage processing, you name it. The next use case is what we call extend and expand. I think we've got a great demonstration of that today. It's really common when we work with customers that already have a lot of major out-of-the-box projects that need to be part of their automation solution. It can be their CRM system, ERPs, databases, or other products that are built to handle just a part of the process. Decisions is designed to integrate with these existing out of the box solutions and automate the special processes that these systems don't do well. Things like underwriting, things like human in the loop approval processes. We have several different ways of doing that. We have several out of the box integrations that come with the platform. You can see some of them here. But most importantly, we can connect to anything with an open API. If you have a specific system that you're wondering about, pop it into chat and we'll get the answer for you. But 99.9% of the time, that answer is yes. You take the previous example a step further, we often act as an orchestration layer between different applications. So if you have lots of different applications, like in the insurance business, that have users and data in them, you can use decisions as kind of a middleware to bring data in from one application, trigger an activity for another user in another application, or populate an outcome in yet another. Our most common use case is to act as an orchestration layer between various software applications or services and engage end users in workflows that cross those application boundaries. If you found some of that or any of that or all that interesting, you can reach out to us at sales@decisions.com. But like I said, we love a spicy chat. Let us know in chat. We'd be happy to set up a sales demo for you with one of our sales engineers like Veda to show you how decisions can be used to automate your business. Let's get to the good stuff. Thanks for your patience, everyone, for the commercial. Let's talk some good stuff here.
Yeah, thanks.
Kevin is one of our account executives at Decisions. He's been with us for a long time, and he deals with a lot of our large insurer customers. Kevin, can you introduce Jess and kind of take us through this Rethink Underwriting story?
Yeah, thanks, Danny. And a big thank you to Jess for joining us today. Jess is from Rethink, and we've really enjoyed getting to know her, her team, and their evolution of their underwriting workbench and how they use decisions to complement that. So, Jess, I don't want to steal really any of your thunder. Feel free to introduce yourself and perhaps give some more background on Rethink.
Sure. So I'm Jess Redhead, head of product at Rethink. We are obviously a digital underwriting platform within the London market, and we specialize. Our main use case for decisions is what is typically referred to as smart follow. So a usual kind of process for placing risk in the London market, just because of the scale and the complexity, is that a broker will present a risk and they will find a lead market. And that lead market will be the one who prices, sets terms, does a really thorough job of assessing it and puts a line down. So they'll cover, a specific percent. And what that broker then needs to do is find markets who will follow that leader to fill the rest of the placement. So where we come in is, rather than the broker having to shop around and talk to each follow market independently and negotiate and agree terms, we get the broker data into our underwriter workbench. So it's structured and it's consistent and it's valid and correct and as thorough as we can get it. And then we run that through decisions in the background. So nobody interacts with it in the front end. It's all API driven. We get a nice, tidy response back. But because of the breadth of capacity that we can manage within decisions, instead of a broker getting multiple individual answers, we can put their data in front of configured rules that represent multiple carriers and then consolidate that back to a single offer. So they've spoken to us on behalf of multiple other people. And also they've got, a reliable response. It's data-based, it's objective, it's auditable, it's the same, no matter what day of the week they bring it to us or which specific underwriter they speak to. It's reliable, which is obviously a massive kind of improvement on those older, more manual processes where it's bits of paper and spreadsheets and conversations.
So your team is really, in what we think special sauce, is really bringing all of the data, the logic, the rules, if you will, for all of these brokers to one place, so that underwriting can occur for these transactions, right?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the benefit for the broker is efficiency. We're obviously saving them that kind of time. We're playing back quickly. A typical kind of, once we've got the data in the system, a typical response from our API is 8 to 10 seconds, depending on the size of the payload. And that comes down to, really more than anything, the complexity of the data that we're dealing with. Because of the breadth of classes of business, you think about insurance is insurance regardless of scale. There's basic policy data like dates and who am I insuring and what kind of insurance and what are the limits and what are we covering. But when we're dealing with some classes like cargo or North American property or international property, there's a schedule which can be a whole
Mhm.
list of, properties and values and occupancies and everything else. So there's a fair amount to be taken into account. And really, once we've got that data in a way that's structured, the only sort of challenge is how do we support our carriers in building rules that use that data? So we can articulate an underwriting guideline in a way that matches the data points we have available, then we can build it.
Excellent. It's another one of those places where it'd be challenging to find, an off-the-shelf software product to really automate a lot of this. And even if you do, there's going to be a lot of custom work to really address the challenges that we're showing here on the screens. Jess, how are you guys thinking about some of these challenges? Maybe share a little bit about the other technology, the technology landscape that existed before you brought decisions in.
So we actually started way back at the beginning when I first joined Rethink with an internally developed platform. So we had a small team of developers, and we had a platform that was both an underwriter workbench and a rules engine. And what that meant was that if we wanted to add a new data point or add a new rule, that we went through the full dev and test release cycle for the whole thing every time.
Mm.
So in our new kind of architecture with a separate workbench and integrations, what this means is we can make a rule change. I'm not going to say at will because it's not quite as quick as that,
Yeah.
but on demand without having to push a release across multiple different platform teams and coordinate that. And sometimes we do. I mean, the evolution of it really in the time that I've been at Rethink is quite iterative. So we might start with some quite high level underwriter guidelines that sometimes say yes, sometimes say no, sometimes will refer something to an underwriter, but we're really clear about why that is. And over time, new data points become available, or we get really good feedback from our underwriting team that says we're always referring this and we always say yes. So can you just change the rules so that it says yes every single time? So we've been able to be really responsive to that kind of feedback.
Excellent. So you went from
No
this,
scrum meeting.
yeah, you went from this custom solution and that kind of held everything in one place, but beholden to the traditional software development lifecycle. And today, we've separated the underwriting workbench, from the rule engine essentially, and that has allowed you to make changes, your underwriting team to have their feedback implemented, much faster. What's the technology behind the workbench today, if you can share?
So our underwriter workbench is Salesforce Industries.
Got it. Excellent. So still a bit of a software development life cycle, but
Yeah,
an improvement from the previous custom built solution.
absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think you have some examples of some of these rules to
Yes.
share with us today. Wonderful.
Yeah. So one of the principles, of course, when you're dealing with this kind of implementation is keeping it scalable and manageable. So we spent a long time thinking about this, and we have quite a lot of discipline about how we build rules in a way that is really generic. So we've abstracted some of the parameters of the rules out from the rule itself. So we can refer to attributes on the contracts and the guidelines that we set. So, for example, this rule covers excluded risk location. So it's really common for a carrier to say, generically, I like this kind of business, but not if it's in any of these 5 countries. And they might want to add a country to that list because, world events, things change. So this rule is applied to most contracts, and it just says, does the primary location of the risk exist in the configured countries for this contract? So it's always checking in context, depending on which contract is valid for that policy. And it's, as you say, it's really simple, but it's still looking at a data source that can change. So actually, I can change that country list without having to change the rule itself because I know how it works.
Excellent. Yeah. Adding a country without going through the software development life cycle for a full update is very, very helpful. But what I found very interesting about this rule, and we'll see this in the other examples as well, is not only is it a filter or a knockout rule, but it's building additional data that the underwriting workbench can use over time. And that's one of the, the primary things we'll look at for these other examples. So let's go to number two.
So this is slightly more complex, primarily because of the data structures. So that previous rule was looking at a single field that has a single value in it. This is looking at territorial limits. So, and some of this is about dealing with the vagaries of how people describe risk. So sometimes a broker will say it's a worldwide policy, and we know actually worldwide, you mean literally every single country. So we send decisions every single country because for the rule to have any value to be meaningful, it has to be that specific. But also we have risks wherever it's specified. It might be these two countries, it might be Europe plus this one plus this one. So what this rule is doing is consolidating that list to check that again, none of the totality of that risks coverage is on a list that means it needs to be referred.
And this is one of those challenges in that conversation, that was happening before decisions between, and it still happens, today too,
Yeah.
but that conversation between developers and underwriters, right? Trying to really understand, okay, here's the logic that we want to implement. But the developer, they can really only show a workflow that they've drawn on a whiteboard or a rule that's written out in documentation, or at worst, they'll try to explain what's happening in the code to the underwriting team or the project team. Here, having what the logic is also be the thing that's executing makes that feedback loop a lot more reliable.
It does. It's really transparent. We're lucky, I think, a lot of our underwriters, because they've been with Rethink for a while and they're used to working with us that way, they can articulate things in a way that makes it so much easier for my team to build it in decisions. And we can play back really easy and we can troubleshoot really easily because it is so transparent what we're doing. It's not,
Excellent.
hidden away in some code somewhere that only a developer can see.
Right.
I think that's such a great part about the decision story, right? We're kind of tearing down the barriers between development and the business, right? Bringing the people with the domain expertise, in this case, the underwriters as the authors of this logic, right? Working
Yeah.
together with the developers using a visual paradigm to work together to make should just be much more agile. It's a great story. You have
For
one
those
more example for
That's
us.
true. Let's cover that one more example, then I'll comment more on that idea.
Yeah, I'll keep this one brief because this is a far more complex rule. But again, going back to that principle of the follow market and following the leader, in a lot of cases, almost all the time, it's not as straightforward as a blind follow. As in, if they've said it's okay, then I will definitely say it's okay. So what we're doing with this rule is adding other conditions. So it's saying I will follow them if this thing is true and this thing is true and this thing is true. So it allows for a bit more nuance, and we find that that's completely normal. That people will look at their underwriting appetite and define it in ways that are quite specific, and people can normally articulate that in words. And what we're able to do and what takes the biggest amount of effort, to be fair, rather than kind of building the rule itself, is thinking about what data sources am I building in here? How do I structure it? Which values am I comparing to which values? And what outcome do I want to get to? Does every single criteria have to match? Can it be a maybe on this one? Are there tolerances? Is it sometimes okay if I've got, a property portfolio, if all of it is in an earthquake zone? That's really different to 10% of it being in an earthquake zone. So we're starting to see more demand for things that are complex because of the number of variables. This is, yeah, one example of one of the more complex things we have at the moment.
Yeah, that complexity is really important to demonstrate that, a system that's going to automate some of this, not only can it handle the complexity, but you still can understand what's happening step by step. And in addition to that, when it executes, you will have, a full audit trail of what decisions were made, when, where, why. So that, this idea of trust can exist where, before, it really came down to the underwriters and the package they would put together manually,
Yeah.
potentially including a number of spreadsheets or other reports that are standardized. But, bridging that gap between that manual work that people have learned to trust because these are people,
Hmm.
making these decisions, and the trust that comes from automation where you can see what's executing, but you can also see every step of the way why decisions were made. It unlocks a lot of potential to add complexity that might have otherwise gotten lost, in the previous way of doing things. But Jess, those are fantastic examples. Thank you so much for sharing your experience there. Anything else you'd like to add?
Um, Off the top of my head, no. But have there been any questions? I suppose.
Excellent. There was one
Um,
question that came in, and this question was really asking more about how this might be used with the underwriting workbench as opposed to something like the placement platform. And maybe you could talk a little bit about where this is living in the entire kind of tech value chain that you guys use.
yeah, of course. So decisions, because it's fully integrated to our underwriter workbench, it's almost kind of seamlessly integrated. So literally within the UI and the workbench, our underwriters can hit a button that calls decisions and comes back with a response almost on demand. And that realistically is how their kind of workflow goes. So this placement process of getting something out to a broker is not as much as, we'd like it to be sometimes. It's not a linear, seamless process where you get the data, you send a quote, they say yes, off you go. It's iterative. It's edit and try again and see what happens. Sometimes if the initial decision response has come back with a maybe, which is quite common, some of our rules are implemented in such a way that if we can't determine if it's a yes or a no, we route that to an underwriter. We can even decide where in our underwriting team that needs to go. So there are certain things that can only be approved by someone with a higher level of privilege.
Mhm.
So it's really more nuanced than a kind of straightforward sends back a price sort of thing. It's typically hit, 5 or 6 times in the life cycle of getting a quote out because the data's edited and rerun and edited and rerun.
Yeah. And that's a similarity that we'll see as we transition from what we're talking about here on the underwriting side. And we take a look more at the claims management side of the story. There's a lot of stuff happening in parallel. There's a lot of sending things back to people to coordinate additional questions about what's going on, and using other technology that limits you in terms of what this process can look like, or forces you to be very rigid and how the process is being followed, can actually cause a lot of unnecessary additional complexity. But let's talk more about how decisions is being used in insurance, if I can, Danny.
Absolutely, man.
So we're working with a lot of very large players in the insurance space, and as we do so, we're trying to build out our map of where decisions fits. So the blue boxes here are where we've seen a lot of great success in decisions implementations in the world of insurance, and you'll start to see this theme more and more as we get deeper. But as Danny introduced, decisions is used commonly to extend things like an underwriting workbench with additional workflow or rule capabilities that can be updated without a reliance on the technology that already exists. But in other cases, we're seeing insurance companies build bespoke custom solutions that would replace what they would traditionally buy off the shelf. So if you come to the show at ITC, we can talk to you more about that story. If you use something like Guidewire as one of your core systems, we can talk about how we can serve as an application in that ecosystem to do additional work, on your claims, et cetera, et cetera. But we'll continue to build this map over time. We can talk about it more if you come join us in a demo. But we can also show you other common use cases that we have, ready to show you here at Decisions. So there's a lot happening around pricing automation. There's a lot happening around, I hear all the time insurance companies talk about this idea that they're already constrained enough by regulation when it comes to how often they can update things like price. Why the technology is adding an additional barrier to that process is just nonsensical. We really want to put you in a position where you can check every box required regulatorily to make these changes. But the speed those changes can happen, they're not limited by the technology. But other places include compliance checks, fraud detection, claims adjudication, and we're going to focus on claims for the balance of our time today. Because, and you can go to the next slide, Danny. We're
Yeah.
going to do the demo. So I'm going to
Are you ready?
bring Veda in.
I am.
I'm going to stop sharing, see if I can do a seamless transition here.
Perfect.
Oh, that wasn't bad. Sorry,
No?
my internet actually went out while you were talking the last time. So I'm glad you're keeping them.
No worries.
Thank you.
But Veda, before you get in here, if I could, this goes back to the idea of, how do we handle complexity and the required changes to these claims processes over time. We learn something new about how we can manage this process every time a claim goes through it. So how fast can we take that learning, implement that learning, and how can we kind of take technology out of the way to do that? So Veda, maybe you can introduce what you're going to show, and I might pop in and ask you a few questions.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. So, as Kevin mentioned, I'm going to walk you through a policyholder who's going to start filing a claim, and then how the claim will go through an adjuster and an underwriter to look at, evaluate, and proceed with the entire claim. And then after we're done with that, I'll show you the rules that ran and how you can easily edit or see what happened on every rule and why the process went into approved or denied and so on. And the last part would be just to give you a quick idea about how the back end of the entire process goes.
That sounds great. And for those who haven't seen decisions before, everything you see here is built-in decisions, right? This interface was
Exactly.
built-in decisions. But I want to make one thing really clear before I just let Veda take over. You don't have to use these interfaces. You probably already have some interfaces that you're using. Decisions can operate completely headlessly. And we can talk more about what that means if you want to schedule a time to talk. But thanks, Veda. Let's take a look.
Thank you, Kevin. So as you've seen, once I click to submit and start, I got all the policyholder details. And these are based on, we already have the policyholder information. We just had to pull it from a database or through an API call. And then based on each policyholder, they might have one or more policies. And what we're doing over here, we're asking the basically the policyholder to fill all the information, and they already can see what is excluded from their policy and so on. And then once you go ahead and submit, this is where, after we get the confirmation, this is where an adjuster will be as well now assigned to this claim. And then the way it goes, each adjuster, what we did is based on the policy type, we have a specific adjuster who's going to come into this dashboard that you're looking at in here, and then look at all the claims that had and the new claim that just showed over here. And then just to give you a quick brief, what you're looking at, in order to what we have over here is the report that's showing all the claims that the adjuster had to had worked on before or had still to work on. And then the cool part of it is what you're seeing over here, which is it keeps track, as you get to see its claim tracker, it keeps track of every single step from start to finish of what happened to these claims, where you can easily come and see what happened to it, even check off, for instance, what we're looking at over here, the knockout rules, what was the result, what happened to it, and so on and so forth. So what we've done over here is we allowed the adjuster with a right-click action to just go ahead and work on each claim, either review the claim or if they just want to send an email, view the claim, and so on. So when they go ahead and review the claim, what we've done, as you get to see now, I have all the information that the policyholder already submitted along with the quick view of the policyholder contract. And then we are requesting now, what we're going to do, requesting documents from the policyholder to go ahead and show us what happened to that. So as you get to see, once I did that, and the status updated over here, now the documents the state is no longer in initial statement. Now it went to documents upload. This is where we are making it easier to the adjuster to know, okay, so now I worked on it. What is the next step? And for that, as the policyholder, I received an email that shows me what is it that I requested with the case ID and all the details, and it's asking me actually to upload uh, or the photographs of damage, whatever the adjuster actually asked us to do. And with that, we're gonna go ahead and just click on one of the pictures that I have, and we'll submit. Now that I have it submitted, if you go back to the adjuster and we right click, you get to see now I have a different action that is here. It's no longer review the claim, it's review the documents, because this is what we asked the policyholder to do. So if you quickly look at it, now I have a different visual for this adjuster. In addition to just what we've seen before, now they can come easily in here, check all the documents that the policyholder actually provided, along of some remarks if they want to have to provide on this claim. So if the documents are good. Okay. Now, once I proceed, what's going on here is the claim is going through a setup of, or a rule set, what we call a rule set of knockout rules. It's going to define if it's going to be auto-approved, auto-denied based on conditions that we already have, or if it needs to go into an underwriter review as we've seen over here. So now if we go to the underwriter review, which is I already opened, you get to see that the underwriter has this claim that they need to work on. The similar folder activity panel, as we call it, to give us broader view and details about what happened. Even it tells me that all these knockout rules now, for instance, are true, but I still have to look at it as an underwriter. So when I come in here and review the claim, and some of these actions are similar for the adjuster and the underwriter. This is how easy it is to reuse any pre-built element that we have in decisions. We can always reuse it. Yet the underwriter has more to look at and see. So in addition to the common view of the policyholder details and a document, they get as well to see, okay, do we have enough information? They get to look at the adjuster remarks and say, good to go, for instance. And then in addition to that, we're giving them as well a view of the evaluation rules that's going to help them define either approving or denying all in one place. So they can have a look at all these different rules as well as the key metrics of how much they were the claimant will be actually approved, and then so on and so forth. So once I approve it, and now that I look at it, now it's under approved. And then if you go in here and look at it, it goes updates and gives me all the details of what happened to it. And then who at every single point, who it was assigned to and who actually completed.
Veda, that was a great walkthrough of, different players in this process. In this case, the adjuster and the underwriter completing their tasks. And as people who are more familiar with decisions have noticed, there are a couple of common patterns to how we build these pages, but this is all built in a drag and drop editor. You could change the position of anything on those forms, add additional fields, add additional KPI tiles, just by dragging and dropping in our designers that will show you.
Exactly. Absolutely, Gavin. And one last part is we are even allowing the policyholder at any point in time, they can just use their claim ID to come in here and track how the claim is going and where it is in a timeline, easy to read manner. To just add to what you just mentioned, Kevin and Jess talked about earlier, are the different rules that run within each claim. And this is what you're looking at is just an easier way to manage the rules. So if you ever want to create a rule, you can do it from here. If you don't want to go into the back end designer and work on it. And then over here, what we're seeing is all the rules that we are using within this specific project or this specific process. Now, the cool part is we track every single rule, every step or every change we make, we can track it and we can always come back to it and restore it if we ever want to. So if we ever make a change and at some point we don't like it anymore, we can come back to a previous one and restore it from that one. And the other part is every single claim shows over here what we've done is how did this claim get to be approved and why? So this gives you a broader idea about each rule criteria, the result of it, every single point, and when it was executed to easily look at them, build more data on why each claim went through what went through in here. Um, just
Excellent.
to
If I could interject real quick, Veda.
Sure.
So this theme before we get into the case editor here
Mhm.
of okay, we've shown how you can build a process so that the claim can be worked. But what Jess was helping us understand as they manage a very niche process in the UK for the lead follow type of process is that every time a transaction goes through the system, every time there's an application for insurance, or every time there's a claim that needs to be managed, there's the idea of working the thing, but then there's the idea of working on the process. And how quickly can we make changes to that process? In this case, how quickly can we change how we are managing this claim over time so that we don't just get left in a place where, oh, yeah, this specific type of claim always has this one problem. The current system just creates a big backup of these types of claims. And so it just adds a bunch of unnecessary work. How can we go add a field to the form to accommodate for that particular issue? How can the right person with the right permissions come in here and see what that rule is doing and then potentially change it without having to go through a full stack, update and release,
Yes,
or something that's custom developed. And that's what you started to show here. So maybe
exactly.
you could touch on that and then go to the case editor.
Definitely. So any form, any designer that we build in Decisions, you can come in and edit. And once you click on edit, you get to see what it is. And as easy as you're looking at it, you can come in here and change it at any point in time. And the cool part is our debugger that gives you an idea about once you make a change, how the change is going to affect the rest of the process. So you can easily visualize what's going to happen. And if you are willing to actually save your changes or just don't do that at that point. So it gives you a track of every single one, easily to check what's going to happen, debugging it from here before you actually save your changes.
And there's so much more we could go into with the rules. We don't have
Mhm.
that time to do it. I mean, we'll spend an hour or more on a demo going in deep, including how you can use existing spreadsheets as a holder for the logic that decisions can reference. But today we want to focus more on the process, the idea of how the claim is moving through that process. So, Veda, maybe you can introduce what we're seeing on the screen here.
Yes. So this is actually how the entire process, what you're looking at, how the entire process actually was triggered to move from one state to the other. So these are the different actions that you've seen that an adjuster and or an underwriter can take on a report. Yet with every single step, once the claim is submitted, we are triggering a flow to assign an adjuster. And once we do that and the initial assessment by the adjuster is done, again, we go into triggering another flow, and so on. It all goes automated based on who's assigned to what. And if they've done, like if they actually, what happened to that claim in on each state. And this is where those knockout rules are um, implemented. So before the claim that we walked you through went to an underwriter to actually review, it had to run through some of the knockout rules to either, as I mentioned before, either just approve it or deny it or still have someone to look at it. And these knockout rules, just to give you an idea, I have them over here. So this is what we call basically a rule set. So we can, in a rule set, we can use any type of rule, put them all together and use them as one entity if you want, where you can process a claim based on, I can ask within my flow to process into all of the rules, or I can even just ask it to stop at the first true or the first false and so on. But the other part then just easily, again, coming in here and editing each rule as you get to see is the ability to just easily turn on and off. So let's say at some point in time, I want to add a rule that you get to see over here, but one of the other rules does not match what I want. Instead of me deleting it completely, I can just turn it off. Maybe I want to use it later on. So this is how easily you can go in decisions, manage, create, and actually see what's happening before you make any changes.
And you'll have the full audit record and logs of who made what change and who turned off that rule, right? Is the really big
Exactly.
question. There's also
Exactly.
controls around the full update cycle here, so you can manage, these releases and make sure nothing breaks, see what's going to
Mhm.
happen based on historical data. That's all there. And again, we can
It's
go
all
back to
there.
the rule engine if you want to schedule a demo. But go back to that case editor real quick if you can,
Case right here. Sure.
because if you haven't seen decisions before, you've seen a lot. And some of the rule examples that Jess was walking us through, you saw kind of this linear type of process. It had some branching and merging. That's actually what we call a workflow here. And the rules were the diamonds inside. And those two things work really well together. But the other challenge, especially in insurance, that we had highlighted a moment earlier, was how, hey, like in this process, there's a lot of times when work can go back and forth between different people, and that's not always represented very well, by a workflow diagram. How are you going to show that loop? How are you going to show how something in this stage can go back to this other stage? It starts to look a little complex, and you can build it that way. But what we provided here, what we call the case editor for these claims, is something that is a little, more stateful oriented, where these claims they exist in a state at any given point in time, and the activities that you see below them are things that can happen to the claim when they're in that state. So if you think back, and maybe Veda, you could show it, to some of those reports, and you had that right click action, you're not going to see every action that could happen in that state necessarily, because we have some rules in the background based upon who this person is logged in as to what actions they can take. But this goes to the idea that if you want to add more actions, if you want to, add additional process, simplify process, you want to change how a given, user is able to do work on this thing, you don't have to go into that workflow to do it. You can go into this case editor and you can say, hey, when this case is in this state, I also want to add the ability to do this thing. And that thing is just a workflow inside decisions. It's essentially a blank canvas. So you could go and fetch data from other systems and bring it back. Let's go grab more third-party data about recent weather events and use that in our decision making here about how we're going to, potentially adjust, what's happening in this particular insurance process. Maybe that's more relevant to underwriting than to claims management. But I think the idea is the same. How do we adapt this process over time as we continue to learn from what's happening in the process over time? Did you have more to show, Veda?
That's it from me.
All right, perfect. So let me add one more plug, because that idea of, hey, help me understand what's happening in this process goes back to our offer. If you want to have that process mining engagement where we go in, we take a look at all the log data that you have for your current claims process, and we say, hey, here are the bottlenecks. We noticed that you have a bunch of stuff getting stuck, taking a lot longer to work between this state and this state. How are you managing that today? Those are the kinds of questions we can start to ask and then show you some answers for. Maybe it's something that the case editor inside decisions would be a really good fit for.
Man, great show, you guys. That was super informative. Jess, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I know that it's late there in the UK. We really appreciate you and all the people at Rethink. Thanks so much for joining us today. Veda, you're a rock star. Great
you.
demo. Kevin, great points there about the reusability, the ease of use, basically just helping you solve problems quickly, be more agile, be more streamlined, be more efficient, and be more profitable at the end. Reach out to us at sales@decisions.com to set up a demo with us, with one of our sales engineers like Veda, who can show you how automation can help improve the way you do business today. Again, come see us in Vegas at ITC. We're going to be in Mandalay Bay the 15th through the 17th. Come meet me and Kevin and come sign up for a complimentary claims analysis. Everybody, thank you so much for your time today. Again, my name is Danny, and Decisions. Automate anything, change everything. Thanks so much. Chase, play us out, brother.